What is up, everybody? I am Kevin Iole, and I am happy to be here. Thank you for joining me on my live stream today. Boy, a lot of news. Why is it that it seems like when there's one big event, there's so much else going on in the combat sports world? It is crazy. This week we have UFC 301 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, I should say, in Las Vegas, my hometown, what I think is the greatest city in the world. Of course, we have Canelo Alvarez is defending the undisputed super middleweight championship against Jaime Munguia, 43-0 with 34 knockouts. I will be there at T-Mobile tomorrow night. But there has been an absolute ton going on in the combat sports world. So I thought we would get to it and just kind of take your questions. I'm going to go over a lot of stuff going on here. I'm going to obviously do heavy on Canelo and Munguia because that's the fight that I will be at, that I'll be covering. We'll talk about Oscar De La Hoya and his attempt to get into Canelo's head. And even today, Oscar at the ceremonial weigh-in, they have the weigh-ins now early at most venues. They have the weigh-ins early in the morning so that the fighters don't have to stay dehydrated all day. And then they have weigh-ins for the public. They're already weighed in at that point. But Oscar wore a T-shirt that said, "Eat more meat." And that was a reference, of course, to Canelo in 2018 when he had the positive test for clenbuterol that Oscar brought up at the press conference the other day. That was a wild scene in and of itself to see Oscar and Canelo Alvarez nearly come to blows during a press conference, and probably would not have been good for Oscar De La Hoya if Canelo had popped him, which he was certainly close enough to do. Oscar, one of the great fighters of all time. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know who would win if it was a prime Canelo versus a prime Oscar, because Oscar De La Hoya, for all the goofiness and nonsense that you sometimes see him do, he was a freaking bad man. That man was a great fighter. I mean, a terrific fighter. He beat a lot of really, really good fighters. And, you look at it, and he could have beaten Felix Trinidad in that fight. The Floyd Mayweather fight, I don't want to say he could have beaten him, but he could have made it a lot better fight, right? I mean, he would have had a chance in that fight. Oscar, phenomenal guy, fighter. But, at 50 something years old, I just don't think, that was much of really a thing to do. I mean, he's getting in a fight with Canelo Alvarez, not a smart thing to do, but he was trying to get in his head. Randy Gordon, of course, the commissioner, the host of Sirius XM At the Fights with Jerry Cooney and my friend, said never thought the press conference would get that low. I think boxing has always been about, kind of mind games, and, it's such a mental sport, right? And Canelo has got, to me, Canelo really just has such a strong mind game, and he's so, on top of things that I don't think anything, Randy, that he tried to do there is really going to impact him. I kind of think that Canelo just laughed at it. Like, he has been irritated at Oscar for a long time. And there was a press conference before they did the settlement. So let me just run back the history. For those, I think most of you are probably on this live, know what went on. But in 2018, Canelo signed a deal that was touted as the richest deal in sports at the time with Golden Boy and with DAZN. And it was a long-term deal. I think it was 11 fights that were in the deal, $365 million. And by 2020, Canelo was looking to get out of the deal, and he sued both Golden Boy and DAZN. They were two separate deals: promotional deal with Golden Boy, a broadcast deal with DAZN. But he settled the dispute with both sides. But before it was finalized, he had a fight, and I don't remember what fight this was. It was probably one of the fights in 2020. But he had a fight, and Oscar was next to him on the dais. And they just did not look at each other the whole time. Canelo just stared off into the distance, never said a word to Oscar, never looked at him. Oscar tried to be friendly, tried to talk to him, and Canelo was having none of it. And the feelings have just gotten worse ever since. And Canelo had originally said that he would never do a fight with a Golden Boy fighter. Then the way this situation worked out, he ends up bringing in Munguia. And I think Munguia was a good opponent for this fight. Of course, me, like everybody else, else wishes he was fighting David Benavidez. That would be the fight that we wished that we were getting this time. But I think Munguia is going to give a good account of himself, and it's going to be a good, fun fight. But, oh, my Lord, it just almost spilled over. And Canelo, I mean, I was a little surprised that he let Oscar get in his head that much and got up, right? The fact, when he was chirping at him, and he was speaking in Spanish as Oscar was talking before he got up. And he was saying to him for a while there, who wrote this for you? Because I know you can't write like that, and that type of thing. And it was pretty funny as he got madder and madder. Then he started unleashing this torrent of curses at Oscar, and then later when the media spoke to him one-on-one, it was just nothing but letting Canelo have it. So really, really, really a lot of fun. My man, Dennis Zapata, you might have seen the other day, I am the new president of the Dennis Zapata fan club. I think Jim Lampley, kind of the charter member of that group as well. So, Dennis, I appreciate you joining me. And, of course, my man, Justin Perry, JP, is in here. JP, always good to see you. I appreciate you. Guys, have any questions on the fights, let me know. I wrote a column. I picked Canelo Alvarez to win the fight. I have Canelo by TKO 11. Can I see it going the distance? Yes. I could see this going the 12 rounds. The line on that at DraftKings, let me just pull that up. I think it's 10.5, and then over is minus 200, if I am not mistaken. But let me just pull that up so I have the exact line in front of me here. And yeah, it is over 10.5 rounds is minus 215. So they certainly are expecting a long fight. And I'm looking for the fight to end kind of in the final, maybe 2 to 3 rounds, sort of how I'm looking at the fight going. And that, and this will answer kind of what George asked you, any shot that Munguia could catch him slipping. I think Munguia is going to be highly motivated, and he is going to be in the fight in those first few rounds. I think first 4 or 5 rounds, it's going to be a very competitive fight, and you're going to see both guys landing their shots. But I think as the fight segues into the middle portion is when Canelo is going to really start breaking him down and start hurting him. And that's why I think by, say we get to 9, 10, 11, 12, in those 4 rounds, I think that's when, you can look for the fight to be stopped. Munguia is a terrific, terrific, terrific offensive fighter. He has everything in his arsenal that you would want to have. He has all the punches. He carries power. He's quick. He's got good footwork. He knows how to set things up. His father was a fighter. He just grew up in the gym with gloves on his hands. And he's a guy that really has been around, the game. So he just understands instinctively how to fight. But he's never been, a slick defensive fighter. And I think when we know it's a mistake. In 2018, Canelo had that positive test before he was supposed to rematch with Gennady Golovkin. And so Golovkin wanted a fight on the date. So as a result, his promoter, Tom Loeffler at the time, picked Jaime Munguia to be the replacement for him. And Bob Bennett, who was the executive director of the Nevada Athletic Commission at the time, Bennett would not approve Munguia as an opponent. He was 21-0. I think he was like 32-0. He was 21 years old. I think he was 33, 34-0 at the time. And he was certainly, an inexperienced fighter who hadn't really fought anybody at the world-class level. Bennett turned him down. But I think as a result, he could have done more, right? I think, that he could have done well in that fight. And I wish that he would have let that fight go on. But now he's getting the shot, and we are going to get a chance to see. I just think defensively is his downfall. If he had a few more fights with Freddie Roach, and that also would get Canelo a little bit older, right? Canelo's 33. You get to be 34, 35. That might have a factor. But that would have been better in his going for him. We got some questions popping in here. Michelle, if Canelo wins, will he fight Benavidez finally? So Randy Gordon hosts a show. He had myself and Samson Lukovic on Benavidez' promoter today, and I'll tell you what, Samson was not at all optimistic about that fight happening. I'll tell you, he was not at all thinking it was. He said he offered him $60 million, and he turned down the fight. Did not want to take the fight. I think he does take the fight. So the point, and I didn't get a chance to make this because point on the show today. I mentioned it, but I think we had a lot of crosstalk going on, and Samson was so passionate he was talking over me. But the point I wanted to make was Canelo does things on his schedule, and he's the boss in his mind. And you want to fight him, and you want to make the money that comes from fighting Canelo Alvarez, then you have to do it on his terms. And, you know, everybody, and I was at the press conference after he fought Amir Khan. I got Oscar De La Hoya mad. I got Canelo mad because I'm like, why aren't you fighting Triple G? You should be fighting Triple G. And I did that after the Cotto fight as well. And he ended up picking Amir Khan. Then after the Amir Khan fight, I did it. And he fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. But I think he fights Benavidez, but I think he's going to fight him on his schedule. Now, if come September, he can get a fight with Dimitri Bivol. That's the only fight that he wants to move up in weight. So if he can get a fight with Dimitri Bivol and try to avenge the loss he had in 2022, I think that'll be the fight he takes later this year. But if that fight does not come to fruition, or Bivol gets beat and can't come back that soon, he's fighting Artur Beterbiev. So there's no guarantee you're going to come back quick after fighting Artur Beterbiev. If you've seen Artur Beterbiev fight, you know it takes a long time to recover from being in the ring with him. And so Bivol would be maybe an unlikely opponent for a September fight, maybe more likely opponent for a November fight. So we could see, you know, what would happen there. But I think Benavidez will be, as Oscar likes to say, or as Dana White also likes to say, in the mix. And I think I do think it'll happen before their careers are over. I think those two guys will fight, and I think it's going to be a phenomenal fight. So anyways, let's see. I got a question from John. Respect your knowledge and passion, but as a fan and amateur judge, I'm really disappointed in the media's refusal to hold Canelo accountable on his 3 duck eras. So let's see what they are here. 2014 to 2017, Triple G. The next one is 2018, 22, Triple G. And then the last one is Benavidez to present. You know, first of all, I would disagree. I think the media has mentioned it, but, you know, we cannot, and I don't think ducking is the right word. So I just said, John, you know, if you look back, you can watch the press conference when I stood up and was like, after he fought Cotto at Mandalay Bay, I'm like, why won't you fight Triple G next? You're the middleweight champion. He is a middleweight champion. Fight him next. And I know some of my peers did that same thing, but I said that, and I've said it again. But I think there's a time and a place for all these fights. He fought Gennady Golovkin not once, but not twice, but 3 times. But I will say twice when Golovkin was still in his prime. I mean, Golovkin was the undefeated world champion, and they were both the top. You know, some people had him number 1 and 2. Other people had him a little differently. But however you wanted to rank them, they were ranked very highly on the pay-per-view list. If Golovkin was over the hill at those points, boy, I'll tell you what, those fights were phenomenal fights. And so I think he did fight him. You know, he made us wait longer maybe than we wanted to see. But how much do we think he learned his lesson against Floyd Mayweather? He fought Floyd Mayweather when he was 21. And I think, you know, I wrote this in one of my stories the other day. If he would have fought Floyd Mayweather in 2015 as opposed to 2012, how much different would that have been, right? Think about that. You know, Mayweather was still great. He beat Manny Pacquiao that year. And a lot of people wanted to say Pacquiao was shot, but then look at Pacquiao came back and did after he fought Mayweather, right? So I think, you know, sometimes people want to hold Canelo to a standard. He has fought 3 guys already in the Hall of Fame. 2 people that he's fought will be in the Hall of Fame when they're eligible, Golovkin and Bivol, and there might be a few others in there. And he fought a lot of really, really good world champions and everything. So I think that I understand your point, and I wish that he fought Benavidez now, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But I don't totally agree with it. So that is my take there. My man Dennis, what have you heard about the rumor of Mayweather having some financial issues? There was a rumor going around that he was stuck in Dubai. He's not in Dubai. He was at the LA Clippers game a couple of nights ago. He's back. I'm anticipating him being at the fight tomorrow night, so people will see him. We'll get to see him live, right? But he will be there at the fight. And I don't think he's having financial issues. I don't think he's making $300 million a month like he's telling people he is. He's just talking. I mean, he'd be one of the, if not the richest man in the world if he was making $300 million a month, but he's doing okay. And I think that, he's not struggling. So no, I would not agree with that. Let's see, what do we got? My man, Jersey Joe, we were talking about you today, Joe. Will Oscar De La Hoya play a factor on Canelo's mental state? I don't think so. I mean, I think Canelo is a smart enough fighter, and he's a veteran. He's been around. He has seen all that stuff. So I don't think he's going to let, he's going to do what he was going to do, right? He was asked that by Jim Lampley. There's an interview with Jim Lampley and Canelo up, payperview.com did it. It is on Instagram. I think you can find it on Facebook. And Jim asked him that question. And at first he said no. Then he said yes, because I think Canelo thought about it. And yes, I'm going to make him pay. That was kind of the answer he knew Jim was looking for. But then when you listen to him answer the question, I think he said, I have my plan. I know what I'm going to do. I think if it did anything, it's going to make Canelo gloat more if he wins, right? I think if he gets in there and he gets a victory, I think then you're going to see him. He's going to probably go over and say something to Oscar and have all that that kind of stuff going on. So that is what I think goes on there. What's up, JD? We might as well answer this question. Of course, we're on a combat sports chat, but you can see I love the Golden Knights. I got the Stanley Cup back there. So I am a Golden Knights fan. I'm worried tonight. I'll tell you what, and we're going to go off hockey after I just make this little soliloquy here. But when the Golden Knights were fighting for playoff position and who they were going to play in the first round, I was really against Dallas. A lot of people said, oh, I don't want to see them play Edmonton. I wanted them to play Edmonton because to me in the playoffs, it's goaltending, right? And Edmonton had the worst goaltending of all the teams that they could have possibly played. And so I wanted to see them play the worst goalie. Jake Ottinger had not played well against the Knights over his career, but he is a tremendous goaltender. And I'll tell you what, having to beat him tonight concerns me. So that is something that I am, a little worried about tonight. But fingers crossed that they do it. We can go more into the Canelo fight as we go on, because I'm going to be here for at least an hour unless there are no more questions, and I think we'll get the questions popping up. But I want to talk about the Ryan Garcia situation, because boy, is that really something. So I haven't talked to you guys since Ryan came forward and I knocked Devin Haney down 3 times and won a majority decision on April 20th in their bout at the Barclays Center. Now, all the Ryan Garcia fans let me have it, right? I basically said the fight should have been pulled, that he had, mental health issues and he shouldn't be allowed to fight. And he did a troll job. Now, I think some of it was real. And I think some of it, Ryan has had mental health issues in the past. And I don't, look at how he behaves in public, right? I mean, so I think he has stuff going on, but yeah, I just feel like Ryan, his fans kind of gloating, ha ha ha, you were against my guy and look what he did and everything else. But now we come out with the news that not only did he not make weight and not try to make weight which is sacrilege in boxing. I mean, you're really hurting your opponent that way. That is really unfair, intentionally missing weight. Basically, what he did was he paid for an advantage, and that should not be allowed to happen. So that is not, that's unfair. But then he turns around and now he tests positive for Osterine. My sense is, and this is just my sense, that it was contaminated supplements, right? But I've had that sense on other people, and it turned out that it was they were using. The burden of proof is now on him. He's got to prove that that he did not take this, and that in fact that it was contaminated supplements. A lot of fighters say that. I've covered drug testing ever since drug testing started. Nevada, I think, was the first state to do it, as I remember. And I don't have a list of all the states, and I don't have a list of the fights in order. So if I know some of you were saying that I mentioned fights out of order. I don't have a list of their fights right in front of me. I was there, but I don't remember the fights in specific order. So I apologize about that. But generally, I have it where I'm at. But anyways, Ryan, a lot of fighters say, yeah, I didn't do it, it must have been a tainted supplement, or somebody's trying to cheat me, blah, 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 blah. He was tested with what's called IMRS testing. That is absolutely foolproof, and I have never seen a test where it's incorrect. So the one thing that I know 1,000,000% is that he had that banned substance in his system. The question is, how did it get there, and what were the levels? We do not know what the levels are right now. So, there is no chance that this was not in his system, right? That is not there. That is not a chance at all. And I've seen Randy mention if the B sample comes back dirty. The B sample will come back dirty because it was tested by IMRS in the first one. The B sample is going to come back the exact same way. There is no chance it's not going to do that. Now the question becomes, okay, how did it get into his system, right? So they certainly have to look very carefully, and it's going to be on Garcia's team. There's only one fighter that I can remember, and there might be more, but there's one fighter that I can remember over the course of time who said that he did not do it, and who really looked guilty. Believe me, I'm going to talk about him in a second. But at the time when he popped, not one person that I know that knew him was surprised, and that was Iole Romero, the UFC middleweight at the time, who was a silver medalist in the Olympics for Cuba, and he was built like an Adonis. He was built like I was as a teenager. And but that was everybody thought, oh my, Iole Romero's using. And when he tested positive, everybody said, see, we knew he was using. And his manager, Malki Kawa, said, no, he wasn't using. And they tested every single supplement. And all of a sudden they found a batch of his supplements that had, where they analyzed, and they had a banned substance in it. And they got the lot number from it. And it turned out that at the manufacturer, that lot number was, so he got out of it, right? So there's not that doesn't happen very often, right? So George just reminded me in the comments that the Povetkin sample came back clean. I do not remember that, but he did not do IMRS testing. If a test is done, analyzed with IMRS testing, it's not coming back. It's not changing from what the first result was. It is going to be the same thing. So that leads me to this question, which I think is a very interesting and an appropriate question to miss weight on purpose. Now the failed drug test. If it isn't a tainted supplement, will they throw the book at him? I think he is going to get a very big suspension if New York finds that, in fact, he knowingly took this. And you also have to remember, there is the captain of the ship theory, right? And I remember it was first used with Fernando Vargas when he tested positive in the fight against Oscar, and I believe that was the first fight that there was steroid testing. There wasn't much being tested for, but whatever was out there at the time, and Fernando came up like that, right? So he blamed it on Maz Ali. He said, I never took anything knowingly. He said, but I ate what was given to me. And as testimony went on in that case, and I'm trying to remember because it was 20 plus years ago, and my memory isn't photogenic, but that particular time, he said, Maz Ali was my nutritionist. I was eating what he was giving me. And then there was more testimony that, in fact, Maz Ali was putting stuff into his food. And so that's how but then the commission said, you got the benefit of it. You are the captain of your ship, and you have to make sure that not only do you not knowingly and actively cheat, but nobody on your team does that as well, right? Because it's easy to say, yeah, I'm not going to take anything, wink, wink, and then have somebody on your team drop stuff in your food or however they want to do it, and then you have a PED in your system that you're getting the benefit from. So, Ryan is going to have to prove that it was in fact a contaminated substance, or that the testing was flawed. And the fact that fighting that the testing is flawed, I just think that is a losing argument. That people have tried that as well, and with the level and the sophistication and these accredited labs, and the samples are being sent to labs that are accredited and meet a very strict list of standards. It's not going to be faulty testing. So it's going to come down to, he's going to have to show that his that his supplements were tainted. And if he can do that, then he should be off. And, I think the fight will be turned into a no contest no matter what, because it was in his system. And I believe that when the B sample is tested, it will confirm that it was in his system. So he did have the benefit of it. Now, if it was a tainted supplement and he didn't do it knowingly, and it was just, inadvertent usage, then I think the fight changes from a win for him to a no contest. Haney gets his undefeated record back, and they can decide whether to fight or not fight again if they want. But that would be the extent of the punishment if it's a tainted supplement. The fact that it would just change the way the outcome of the fight came. But if they find that in fact he or somebody on his team gave that to him, then that is a different story. And so I just, I think he's really got a difficult task ahead of him, and really going to be something. So anyways, let's move on here. Have I read Game of Shadows? Yes, I did read that. And that is something. You know what? Look, people are going to cheat. And I'm going to use an example, right? And there's probably a lot of people who are watching this live stream right now, or who will watch it. Steroids to the athletes are kind of like stealing the pay-per-view signal to you guys, right? It's wrong and you shouldn't do it, and you're taking money out of the fighters' pockets, right? I think it's absolutely freaking outrageous that this pay-per-view is $90 tomorrow. Are you kidding me? Come on. That is the height of greed. I mean, it is really terrible. And it's one of many reasons why boxing is always in difficulty. But if you want to buy it, that's the price to pay to buy it. Same thing if you want to get in to watch it live. The ticket prices are astronomical. They make it very difficult on anybody but the biggest, the richest people to get into these fights and see. Unless, of course, like undoubtedly there will be tickets that are unsold, and they will give it away, right? And they're going to give a lot of the tickets away. By the way, available right now on KevinIole.com. So just go to KevinIole.com and click under the 3 lines at the top left, and you'll be able to go to my store, and you can buy this and a lot of other stuff. Still cold too. This is my first time in business and selling stuff, so I got to take a little advantage of the fact that I have a chance to do it. But anyways, yeah, but so you guys don't have any compunction of stealing the pay-per-view signal, right? And so we really don't know how many people watch a given fight, because however many buy a pay-per-view, there's scores and scores and scores more that steal it. And, you're making it difficult on everybody else by stealing, because number one, you're taking money out of the fighters' pockets, you're taking money out of the promoters' pockets, and the people who follow the rules, me and other people like me, and are paying for the pay-per-view, we have to pay higher prices because of those who cheat. Well, it's the same thing with steroids, right? Some of these fighters, when they decide to cheat, they're not just helping themselves, they're hurting other people. And I think it needs to be, I really do think it needs to be, handled harshly. So if he ends up getting uh, you know, found guilty in this, that if New York concludes that in fact he did take this, then I think they should throw the book at him. And I think whatever New York's rules provide, because he'll be punished by the State Athletic Commission in New York. That's who's going to have jurisdiction in this particular case. So in that sense, I think that whatever their maximum penalty for a violation like this is, if he's found guilty, he should face that, because intentionally missing weight and then coming back and having PEDs, that would be unforgivable in my mind. Going on, $90 is a highway robbery. Yeah. And you would never pay $90 for a pay-per-view. And I understand why, right? I mean, I think that there are people, who would never pay anything. They say, hey, it should be like the NFL. It's all on free. And if there was an unlimited amount of TV channels and people to produce it and people want to put it on, they would do it. But you know what? Boxing doesn't generate the kind of revenue and the ad sponsorship and the things that make it worthwhile for the broadcasters to put it on. And so they have to end up doing, pay-per-view. And it ends up allowing the fighters. A lot of fighters think it's, they see pay-per-view as a panacea, and they have a goal. They want to go to pay-per-view because they think that they're going to get these big, these big paydays when they get to pay-per-view. And that's not really how it works. Like in the case of a Floyd Mayweather, he built into that. And then it wouldn't have made any sense to put him on anything but pay-per-view after a certain period of time, right? After he fought De La Hoya, it made very little sense to put Oscar on free television, because Oscar's going to be, Floyd was going to be selling so many pay-per-views that you would lose money to be on regular television, right? But in rare cases, you're better off being on, with more people. So you're better off being on ESPN, or you're better off being on CBS, or whatever the case may be. I think Heyman ought to use his Amazon Prime to put some good fights on. And not just, and so I want to say this too. When I say good fights, yes, I'm referring to the actual matches and how they're going to match up, but also big names, right? Because we want to see the big names, and we want to see those guys, sometimes think of wrestling, now or even back in the day, but really back in the day, like say when I was a kid coming up, you would watch Saturday afternoon wrestling, and every big star would be on the free, the Saturday afternoon all-star wrestling or championship wrestling, whatever it was. You would see all the big name guys, and they would do their interviews and they would hype the fights. And it was just one big promotion for the local house show, right? And now it's a big promotion for the pay-per-view show. Well, I think, Heyman's got that deal with Amazon Prime. Why not go ahead and put a fight that maybe is like a borderline pay-per-view, throw that on Amazon, where they have a big wide audience, and let people see that for free, and try to build toward a big pay-per-view fight with somebody, as opposed to just sitting there and saying, yeah, we're going to make you pay for every single fight, because people get sick of it, people steal it, and you don't end up, doing the business that, that you were going to do. So, that is going to be something. What are the projected pay-per-view numbers for this fight? Well, my projected pay-per-view numbers for this fight, and I talked to some people that seem to think I'm in the ballpark, it's going to be 300-ish. I was wrong with the Garcia fight. I thought the Garcia fight would do a lot less than it did. It came in above 400, above, actually a little bit above 450. But Canelo has not sold the last couple fights, right? He hasn't done the big numbers. It's been a while since he's done a really, really big number. I think, Canelo has two fights as we sit here right now, that I think are $1 million buy fight. I think the Terrence Crawford fight would be $1 million buy fight. And I think the David Benavidez fight would be a $1 million buy fight. And beyond that, I don't think that, even for Canelo, there's a lot of fights out there that are going to do, huge numbers like that. Look, Munguia is known among, everybody who's watching this is probably a hardcore boxing fan, I would think, right? Or a combat sports fan, in any event. So we're all fans of combat sports. But there's a lot more people than just us out there. We're not even 1% of the whole, audience, right? And those people never heard of Jaime Munguia, just never heard of him. And so as a result, I think that becomes it's difficult to get people, to buy, right? Especially now at $90. And it's, the undercard, like I'm just going to read you the odds on these undercard fights, right? I mean, just a couple of these undercard fights that just show you, somebody, and I'm going to answer a question in a minute. Barrios minus 1,200, Figueroa minus 1,400, Stanionis minus 1,100, Milnicki minus 1,400, Ramos minus 2,000. I mean, though, what is that telling you? There have been guys that have been big dogs like that have won, but it's not often that happens. And that you just look, you just look at it and you say, you got to give us something for our money. You're asking me to pay $90, and then you're not giving me any fight that I'll say, man, is a can't miss fight. So anyways, we shall see. What else do I have here? What is my opinion of Mario Barrios? I think Barrios is really a fun fighter. I don't think Barrios is a elite fighter. Like, to me, I'm thinking Barrios is he's kind of a mid to bottom top 10 guy, right? In his division. I think, he's going to match up well with certain fighters, and not, guys that have good movement and are quick are going to give him trouble. But, if you're a guy that comes to fight and likes to stand in the pocket and trade, you're going to have really good footwork to beat Barrios, right? I mean, he's got a good chin, he's got a good work rate. He puts his punches together. And I think so for him, he's a fun, entertaining guy to have on a card. The only thing I would say is, let's just put him in fights that, let's brainstorm fights for him and see where things go there. Let's see what else I have. I got Munguia winning because of his superior stamina, size, youth, freshness, work rate. Those I think those Golovkin wars took a toll on Canelo, and he's always struggled with his cardio. Where am I wrong? I think I picked Canelo to win, but I did say that I think Munguia has a chance to win the fight. There are times in these fights when you make them and you say, the B side has no chance to win. This is not one of those times. I think Munguia has a chance to win the fight. I don't think he's going to win the fight because he's got holes defensively that Canelo will exploit. Canelo is a really good counterpuncher, and Canelo hits hard. And Canelo also has that experience. And I think that, Munguia is stepping up for the first time. As I mentioned at the very beginning of this, Munguia was life and death with Sergey Derevchenko, right? Derevchenko, good fighter who was definitely at the end of the line, especially after he fought Triple G. And I just, I think Jaime is a guy that just gets hit way too often. And you're getting hit a lot by Canelo. That is going to take its toll on you. The one thing Charlo did, right? The Charlo fight sucked. And I was hoping that Charlo would have enough pride. He was the undisputed super welterweight champion. And yes, he was jumping up 2 weight classes. I was hoping he would have enough pride and enough confidence to believe that he would be able to, put on a show, but he just stayed away, did not want to get hit. And it was clear that Charlo, all he wanted to do was get to the 12-round finish, right? He was not interested in anything other than being there on his feet when the fight ended and getting to hug Canelo when it was over. That was really what he was there for. And that disappointed me. Munguia is going to go after him. Munguia is going to fight him. And so, as a result of that, I just think it's problematic. I think it's problematic for Jaime to win this fight. I think, Freddie Roach said to me the night of the Munguia-John Ryder fight, I asked him that night, are you ready to go to Canelo next, or do you feel like you need another fight, in between? And he told me then, he said, I'd rather have another fight or two before we go to Canelo. But obviously, the Canelo fight was offered, and you can't turn that fight down, right? And so he had to take the fight, and that was just one of those things that that would happen. So let's see, what else do we have here? Caleb Plant and Berlanga had some words today. Jesus, Berlanga, and that could be something we see in the future. Keith Connolly is the manager. He is really a smart guy, right? And I don't think he is going to want to put Berlanga. People were talking about ducking. I don't think you're going to want to put Berlanga in the ring with Caleb Plant before he gets Canelo, because I don't think he beats Caleb Plant. I think he gets beat pretty decisively, right? So if they want to make Berlanga make a Canelo fight, then they have to have him win. And I don't think he's going to win against Caleb Plant. So as a result, I just don't see that fight happening. Let's see, what else do we have here? I answered this one already, but I kind of figured it would come up a few times. I do think he will fight Benavidez. Do I think he's going to fight him next? I reserve judgment on that. I am not going to say that he is going to fight him next. I just think that is a one there's too many variables in that are difficult to predict how they come out, and so as a result of that, I just kind of feel like as a result of that, I can't guarantee he's going to fight him next, but I do think that Canelo and Benavidez will fight at some point before Canelo, not only before Canelo's career is over, because Canelo is older than Benavidez, but I think in the next, I would say on the longest possibility, I would say would be 24 months, but I would say 12 to 18 months would be the time frame that I would think that we would see a Canelo Benavidez fight. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But we will have to see. Let's see, what do we have here? Samson has to chill with the scared narrative. Like I say this all the time, I don't, professional fighters aren't afraid. And there have been very few professional fighters that I have ever seen who have ever really been afraid in a fight, right? You just don't see that. They go into these fights, and even when they're massive underdogs, so I listed all those numbers, on the undercard tomorrow of the people that are fighting Barrios and et cetera, et cetera. Those opponents, they believe they can win. So they're not afraid. They might be nervous about the moment, and can I perform my best under the bright lights? And they get to thinking about the crowd and the hype, and they start to think of things other than what their job is and what they're supposed to do. And when that's the case, then they won't perform at their optimum level. But I don't think the fighters go in, they're who I think was scared, and he's one of the great fighters of all time, and I have massive respect for him. I voted for him for the Hall of Fame, and I have him right up there in the all-time light heavyweight rankings as Michael Spinks. But I think when he was going to fight Tyson in '88, you remember that Frank Bruno did the same thing. But he certainly was just not into the, getting in there and having Tyson throw punches at him. And, he had second thoughts, I think, and did not want to walk out. And, he was a lifelong 175 pounder, and he had moved up to heavyweight, kind of taking advantage of an old Larry Holmes and, that type of thing. And then bingo, and now he's, there he is, going in there. So, that is, I just don't think that happens as often as you guys seem to think. Alex Stewart, same thing. I mean, I think we can throw, over the hundreds of years of boxings or over our lifetimes, we can pick and choose and say, hey, this guy looked like he was afraid. This guy looked like he was afraid. But I just don't see that. And so this is another point that I would make, Canelo is afraid to lose. I know it's obvious, John, and are you the former national security director? I mean, I kind of have the same name there. But obviously you're not a Canelo fan. I can see from your questions that you're not a Canelo fan. And that's fine. You don't have to be a Canelo fan. I am neutral, right? I'm not a Canelo fan, nor am I a Canelo supporter. I am a fan of Canelo, what he has done in his career. And I think Canelo has developed into, he's got a little bit of Mayweather in him now, right? Mayweather, basically said, if you want to fight me, these are the rules. And this is what you're going to have to do. And people either said, hey, they're going to get their biggest career payday fighting Mayweather, and so they have to pony up and do it. I liked it better when it was in the 80s, especially because those guys, and you said, screw it, I want to fight the best guys in the world. That's what they do in MMA, right? That's why MMA is at such a high ebb right now, because they call each other out, they call the best out, and they make the best fight the best. And when that happens, combat sports is a magical thing, and you see a lot of great fights, and you see a lot of entertaining scraps, and a lot of historic and memorable moments. And when we start to bring the business into it, and because you make yourself bigger if you take risks, and like Dana White uses Arturo Gatti as an example, and you can you can use Gotti as an example of this, but there's a lot of fighters out there. If you come to fight and people want to see you, you're going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And each time out, your audience is going to go like that. And you're going to have people, they don't care who you're fighting because they know you are going to deliver a show yourself. And who you fight is going to be secondary. Now, if you happen to fight Triple G and Canelo, or Oscar versus Mayweather, or whoever the fight would be, Mayweather versus Pacquiao, that's when people, when the numbers go astronomical and go off the charts. And I remember saying to Richard Schaefer, and then I bet Dana White this, and of course I wish I could get Dana on here, and if I can get him on, I think he's in Brazil right now. But before Mayweather Pacquiao, I talked to him fight week. And I told him I thought the fight was going to do over 3 million buys. And I thought it was going to do maybe 3.5 million buys, because I was seeing anecdotal evidence of this. And of course, it ended up doing 4 point. And he's like, no way, it's going to do 2.5 million. And we had this argument. But what I think what had happened is, Mayweather and Pacquiao, they started talking about fighting in 2009. Each of them then went out and they fought other great opponents. Even though they weren't fighting each other, they were fighting great opponents. They both fought Cotto. They both fought Hatton. I don't remember all that. They both fought Marquez. And so that, they were out there fighting the same opponents, good opponents, quality opponents, fights that people wanted to see. And every time after one of those fights would end, hey, are you going to fight Mayweather? Are you going to fight Pacquiao? And that just built the interest until we got this massive pay-per-view between Floyd and Manny. And I think that if the fighters recognized that, they would all become big pay-per-view stars, right? They would have that ability to do that because people want to see those kind of fights. And if we made the pay-per-views where the fights came on constantly, and we had 4 or 5 fights on each card where we said, this is going to be a banger, this is going to be a banger, this is going to be a banger, the sport is better off, right? And so it just is, it's just one of those things. So that is what is going on there. So let's see. So I said I wasn't going to talk any more hockey, but Garrett, you're going to make me talk hockey at least one more time. Golden Knights are in Game 6 tonight. I don't have to cover LFA, so I will be watching the NHL. I'll be watching. Let's see, what time is it right now? It is 2:48 Pacific time. So in about an hour and a half, I'm a glutton for punishment. I'll be watching the Pittsburgh Pirates until the Golden Knights start. And then that's the rest of my night. DoorDash at Pittsburgh Pirates and then Golden Knights. That's going to be my night tonight. So no more fighting tonight until tomorrow. Bernardo Brito, thank you for doing these. Much appreciated. I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for joining. Let's see, what do we got here? Is Canelo the greatest Mexican boxer ever? That is a very often asked question. Let me get my earpiece here. That is a very often asked question, and I don't think it's fair to answer it yet. I want to see it. I want to see Canelo's career done, because that's the only way you can really fairly assess someone's career, when his career is over and we see who he has fought, who he has beaten, who he has lost to, and when he beat those people and when he lost to those people. it makes a big difference, right? Jake Paul beating Mike Tyson in 2024 means zero in terms of his legacy. But Jake Paul beating Mike Tyson in 1996 would have meant a lot. Although Jake Paul would have been 18 months old or something like that. But you get what I'm trying to say, right? So it's But I would say Canelo is certainly up there with the list of people that he is on his resume. He's got a really good resume, and I think he's got to be up there. There's a lot of them that I mentioned a lot of them this week, but Ricardo Lopez and Salvador Sanchez and Jose Napoles and on and on and on. There's so many great Mexican fighters, Julio Cesar Chavez, of course, so many great Mexican fighters out there that are in the running for that. I think Canelo has a chance. I do think Canelo has a chance, but it's going to depend on who he fights the rest of his career. Hey, if he fights David Benavidez and beats him, that is going to give him another argument, that he in fact deserves that kind of thing. If he beats Bud Crawford, I think that's going to be another one. So that is something I think is really amazing. Let's see. I think that's what Dana does well, is pay-per-views have great matchups throughout the card, something boxing can learn from. Yeah, I think that, they created in MMA, and it permeates all of MMA, but Dana created, this, hey, I want you to come to fight and don't worry about eking out a decision. Because, one of the goofy things in boxing is that if you lose, you can be cut out of your contract by a promoter or by a TV network or whatever, right? If you're going to cut somebody, cut people who stink the place out, who run, who don't want to come to fight. Cut Charlo after the way he fought against Canelo, right? Don't cut guys who come to fight and they happen to get beat by a better fighter. They get caught by a big punch. Don't cut those kind of fighters. Cut the fighters who don't want to give us value for the. And hey, look, I also want to say this. I recognize fighters are risking their lives. And I hate to say this, and I say it a lot, I've been ringside for 7 fighters who died in front of my eyes. I had one of them fall into my fucking lap, and I hate that. I hate talking about it. It gets me worked up whenever I talk about it. But I recognize the safety issue, and I recognize the risk these people are taking and the sacrifice they are making and the sacrifice that their family is making. So I get that, but it also is an entertainment business, and you're out there and you're competing against the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball and the NHL and MMA and the concerts and the comedy shows and the movies and in the restaurant. You're competing against all those things, and if you want people to say, you know what, I am going to not go out on Saturday night, I'm going to watch your fight, or I'm going to buy a ticket and go to the fight and watch your fight. You have to give people value for the money, both as a boxer and as a promoter. And I think that's something that has to be done. So that is there. Let's see. Miguel Cantu, Juan Manuel Marquez, Ricardo Lopez, Chavez. I don't know that I would say all of those are better. I think, Marquez for sure, no. Chavez requires going through his record very carefully, and I went through it with somebody the other day. I was on I guess it was with George, my man George. We were going through George on his podcast, and we went through, and I brought Chavez up in answer to that question, and George doubted it, and then I just started listing off some of the people he had beaten. But yeah, I think fighters, it's best to be determined at the end of their careers. That's my thing. I get this question a lot, and you're not going to like my answer on it, but the answer is it depends. And so I grew up as a boxing fan. I watched Muhammad Ali in the 60s. I became hooked on boxing because of Muhammad Ali. My dad fought in the service. I became a boxing fan. I found there was no such thing as MMA most of my life, right? And MMA has come along, in the second half of my life. I've grown to love MMA, right? So the week of UFC 300, if you would have said to me, "Are you a bigger boxing fan or a bigger MMA fan?" I would have said, "No freaking doubt, I am a bigger MMA fan," because that card was unbelievable. I knew we were going to see fight after fight after fight. And now, if you ask me today, am I a bigger boxing fan or an MMA fan? I would say I'm a bigger boxing fan because I'm waiting to see Canelo, et cetera. So it depends, to me on the matchup and what's going on. There is something about a heavyweight championship fight in boxing, even hearing Michael Buffer when he actually is the ring announcer and hearing him say the heavyweight champion of the world and the way that rolls off his tongue and the way it comes out. That is really, it gives you chills, like as you're, sitting there and listening to that. And, how many Mike Tyson fights was I at ringside, and, the electricity in the building when Tyson is walking down, and coming on is just amazing. So, and let me, I saw this question pop up. So I think this goes into Al's ghost. I've tried watching MMA, but the striking is so amateurish. The footwork and the punching is so elementary. So, I think, Al, the answer I would give to that question is try it for a while, because here's what I used to think when I first started watching MMA 99. I watched like the first couple UFCs, but I wouldn't even say they were striking, right? They were just, and then I got away from it for about 4 or 5 years. And then, Mark Ratner had called me. He was at the Nevada Athletic Commission. He said, "Hey, UFC is going to, and MMA is probably going to get approved in Nevada. You might want to start looking into covering it." And that's how I first, really started looking into it and getting close to it. And then when I first watched it, I thought it was bad boxing, right? Similar comment to what you made. But what you have to realize is they have so much more to defend than a boxer has. So if I'm standing in front of you like this as a boxer, all I have to worry about is you punching me. And now I suck as a fighter, so no matter what, I'm going to lose. But all I have to defend is your hands, right? But as a MMA fighter, I got to worry about you kneeing me and elbowing me and kicking me and punching me and wrestling me and choking me and all these different things that you have to take a certain stance offensively, as you prepare for the fight, so that you can defend against all those things. If you took a boxing stance, you get your legs kicked out from under you, you'd be on the ground and the fight would be over right away. So I think give it a chance, because if you compare it to boxing, say they're not as good as strikers as boxers. Well, you know what? When you look at them in boxing, they're a lot better, right? They don't practice it like a boxer does. A boxer practices boxing from the beginning of his life to the end of his life and practices nothing else. MMA fighters, they practice boxing for an hour, then they go and they have wrestling practice, and then they have jiu-jitsu practice, and then they have MMA practice where they're doing everything. So I just think they're two different sports. And I always like to say it's kind of like baseball and softball. They're similar, but not the same. And so that, hopefully that answer, made sense. Where are my glasses? No glasses anywhere. How about that? I had cataract surgery. And so let's see, what eyes here? My left eye, I had to remember which hand is which hand. My left eye, I had surgery on last Tuesday. And I woke up Wednesday morning, and I'll share this. I've worn glasses for 25, 30 years, right? So last Tuesday, I have my surgery on my eye. I wake up on Wednesday morning, and I grab my phone and I open my eyes and I look at the phone. And at this point in my life, I could not read the phone without my glasses on. And my glasses are on the nightstand. And I look and I can read out of my left eye. And I was like, yes! And I was so excited. This week, I had my right eye done. The right eye has been slower. I still cannot read out of my right eye right now. My right eye now is swollen. And I had my follow-up the next day, Wednesday morning at 7:30 a.m. I had the follow-up with the ophthalmologist. And he told me that I had swelling, which is normal. And he said that the eyes don't generally heal at the same time. And that he figured that my side of my right eye would come back. It would come back, on the weekend, so Saturday or Sunday. So, I'll be covering the fight over the weekend. And hopefully I can see the fight with both eyes, so, so anyways, I was also a boxing fan first because MMA was not around in the 90s. Yeah, I mean, MMA just started in the 90s. And, I'll tell you what, like I watched UFC 1 through, and I'm going to lie about the number, but let's say 5, 1 through 5. Um, and somebody can look this up for me and you can put it in the comment. There was a guy named Emmanuel Yarbrough, and he weighed 601 pounds. He was the MMA version of Haystacks Calhoun. He weighed 601, and he fought a guy named Keith Hackney, who weighed in at 190 pounds. I watched that fight, and of course, Keith Hackney won the fight by knockout, but I watched that fight and I go, what the hell is this shit? This is like professional wrestling. And I quit, I just gave up on MMA at that point because I thought, this is BS, right? A 400-pound weight advantage. I know theoretically you could have that in boxing, but that never happens. And I just, kind of gave up on it. And then, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, Mark Ratner was at the Athletic Commission in Nevada, and I had a great relationship with him. And he told me, hey, MMA is going to be approved by the commission here, and you ought to, get some experience covering it. And when I looked at it, it was totally different. Now, also, I should tell you, and then this is where this story, I told this story before, and some of you may have heard it, but it's funny. I knew Dana White from his boxing days, and Dana, I would go over to watch Mike Tyson train at the Golden Gloves gym, and I would see Dana. One day Dana was going to be a referee, another day he was going to be a trainer, another day he was going to be a promoter, another time he was going to be a manager. Dana really wanted to be in boxing, but he didn't know exactly what he wanted to do. So, we were not like the best of friends, but I saw Dana a lot around the boxing trail, would see him here, see him there, and, that type of thing. So he gets into MMA, and I'm like, not jiu-jitsu was new to me. I didn't know what the hell was going on. They would go to the ground, and I'm like sitting to the person next to me, what's happening, right? I had no idea, what was going on. So I used to go over to Dana's office, and his office at the time, now his office is bigger than my whole house. And I've got like what is my house? 2,500 square feet, 2,600 square feet. But at the time, Dana's office was no bigger than my office here where I'm sitting talking to you guys. And they called it the map room because there was this bookcase behind us with a shitload of maps. And I don't know what these maps were from, but there was all these maps in there. So Dana was trying to teach me because I was the only mainstream journalist covering MMA. And he wanted me to understand it so that I could help get the word out, right? Because I was going to cover it. So he would be laying on the ground and we would be grappling, right? We're on the ground and we were actually fighting, each other. He was showing me this and showing me that. And if you do this, this happens. And if you do that, this will happen. And, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it was very funny, right? And so when Dana when the UFC opened Apex and Dana gave a tour to the local media, it was the Las Vegas media, he told that story and I was right behind him and people were looking at me and I'm like, that's true. Dana and I were on the ground fighting. And then I ended up advancing past Dana and would do it with Frank Mir. So Frank Mir became the UFC heavyweight champion and he was a jiu-jitsu ace. So that was kind of my funny story about that. It was fun, but yeah, so, I mean, I love combat sports. I am not the biggest fan of BKFC. I actually covered, I see somebody put that in there. I covered a couple of BKFC fights and I just was not taken by it. So you may have seen on my, if you went to keviniole.com on my launch day, it said bare knuckle up there. And I covered 2 shows and I said, nah, not for me. And I took it down. Plus I wasn't getting much traffic on it. If I was getting traffic on it, it would have been something I would have done more. So anyways, what else do I have to say here? I don't mind BKFC, but slap fighting is sort of ridiculous. The thing with slap fighting, I do it because it gives me traffic, right? I'm a new website. I'm trying to, build my site up. And the guys are actually great. The fighters are phenomenal. They're great to deal with. and it's a show, and so it's not even as much to me. It is a sport, and I don't want to, demean the people who are fighting in that. But it's like it's just so much fun in terms of the show element of it, and I want to end by talking. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this, and this is going to be, I say in slap fighting. I was against it, and if you guys remember when they first came out, I didn't cover the first 3, 4, or 5 shows, and it was only until I talked to Hunter Campbell one day, and I was ripping the slap fighting, and he said to me, he says, these guys, it's not as dangerous as you think, and then his argument was, go back to when. The boxers, they spar, they get hit in sparring, and the slap fighters don't get hit in sparring. And he was bringing up the fact that you're only getting hit 3 times maximum in a fight, or 5 times if it's a title fight. And so I thought about that, and I said, yeah, that's interesting, right? Boxers, MMA fighters, they're getting hit in the head all the time, right? I went and I started calling doctors, and I talked to a bunch of doctors, some with the Nevada Athletic Commission who weren't allowed to comment on the record. I talked to other doctors, and I wrote a story for my prior employer, and these quotes were in there, and I talked about it, and it was and they basically said it's not this. We don't like any sport where you're getting hit in the head, but it's not, so that's why I covered it, and we'll see where it goes. As I said before, I've covered 7 fighters who died, and if I thought that fighters were at risk of dying in this, I would not cover it. I think after having spoken to as many doctors as I have spoken to specifically about that, I feel confident that that is not the case, and so I feel comfortable I can cover it. And there is a segment of people, mostly young people, a lot younger than me, and I don't really relate to the people who like it, right? I never had a TikTok account until this, but that is kind of where we are. I'm going to wrap this up here. Just a couple more things. My favorite in-arena fight night experience at a Canelo fight. I just think when he entered the ring for the Golovkin fight, he came first for that fight, as I remember, right? And because Golovkin was the champion, and it was the atmosphere. That was one of those fights, like I mentioned before. There are certain fights that stand out in your mind. Tyson Holyfield, 1 and 2, but especially 2. Mayweather Pacquiao. You just knew. Arguello Pryor. You just knew these fights were going to be special, and it was going to be a moment. And I kind of think in that Canelo fight, hey, Triple G had been around. He had been beating all these guys. It had just been, so amazing. And now here's Canelo, the guy kind of like from the system, and the guy that is being groomed to be the superstar, and blah 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 blah. And I was so excited for that fight, and I got chills that night. I remember Chris Mannix was sitting next to me, that night, and I said, "Dude, I have freaking chills as I'm doing this," and it was really amazing. And I think that would be, what I would say more than any moment. There was a lot of really good moments in Canelo fights, and certainly, the 7th round of that first fight was just incredible. That back and forth, and there was a lot of good stuff that had gone on. I thought there were so many moments, but just the scene as he walked out that night and the passion in the crowd, I'll always remember that. That was something that really, really meant a lot to me. So that was something there. I appreciate that, brother. Thank you so much. The super thanks, or is that what we call it? But I appreciate everybody who is supporting me on my channel, and by showing me some love there. That means a lot to me. I attended Canelo, not a competitive fight, but Canelo brought out a great crowd and tons of young ladies. That's why I go to the fights, and I know all the young ladies go to the fights because they know I'm going to be there. So that that of course is what's going on, right, Pierre? Let's see, is Hector Lombard still fighting? No, Hector Lombard is done. So unfortunately, no more Hector. Sorry about that. Let's see, and we'll save this UFC question as the last one, guys. Who I got tomorrow in the UFC main event? I think it's a lot like the UFC fight. I like Pantoja. I think Pantoja wins. He's got more ways to win the fight, but I think Usyk is going to surprise a lot of people how good he fights, and I think Usyk is really, really good. Hey, let me wrap up by saying this. I got two really huge sponsors, A-list sponsors are going to be joining KevinIole.com. They're going to be, you'll see their ads start appearing next week. So if click on their ads, I guess that's what I would say. But click on their ads. I appreciate if you can do that. But you'll see those next week. But my traffic really picked up. I had a tremendous April. We started January 22nd, so it's been building. I was used to the traffic at Yahoo, so when I started at KevinIole.com, I'm like, what the hell is this? But it's really been going up. I had a tremendous April. I'm hoping that May gets even better. I want to mention this too, for those of you who are still on, if you're watching the Fury Usyk heavyweight fight, I will be participating in the live chat on ppv.com on that night. Jim Lampley's not going to be doing that one, but so I guess I'll be the star of the show on that one, right? I'm not sure. I think Lance Pugmire is going to join me, and I believe Dan Canobio. But anyways, my man, the bad guy is here, Chael Sonnen. How are you, Chael? Good to see you, brother. Anyways, appreciate everybody. Look forward to seeing you and enjoy the fights. See you guys.